If you're a business owner out there, Traction by Gino Wickman, it is a game changer.
How would you define the Visionary-Integrator from Rocket Fuel?
Only 5% of the population are natural integrators.
And one of the big takeaways I found from eMyth, I would say,
Thinking in bets. If you know what you know, you're going to be fine, and that sometimes shit happens.
I want to hear about the hard things about the hard things.
This book is all about making hard decisions when things are fuzzy.
Did you know what the original title of Rich Dad Poor Dad was supposed to be?
Blue ocean strategy comes from when you are...
I think one thing that kind of stuck with me more than any of it was...
Welcome to Beers with Contractors.
We are ready to go. Beers with Contractors, tradies. I hope you're doing well out there. Terry, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, Will.
Cheers to you, buddy. Glad to have you back. We missed you last week. Drake, how you doing, man?
Doing great.
Good. Who else is freezing their ass off right now with this Arctic blast coming through? I mean, you know it's bad when Oklahomans are like, oh my God, it's 14 degrees. And then I talk to somebody, way up north, and they're like, yeah, it's -5. And I'm like, good God, man, that's just brutal.
Just got back from a walk.
Yeah.
And -5.
And the kids are in school. They'll shut down schools here for, low temperature warnings. It's crazy. So
and we have this for the next week. It's just going to keep coming.
Yeah. And it's the wind that's brutal. That's what they say. The wind is what gets you. So, hey, but let's get started. Anybody listening out there, first off, thank you for listening to us again. We've been having a blast. We're into our second season here. We've got a few new subscribers. So if you get a chance, subscribe, hit that notification button, no matter what the platform you're on. We love to view your comments and comment back to you. We've gotten some wild ones in the last week. By the way, please keep it PG-13, even though we kind of broach into the rated R sector on our show every once in a while. But let me get to a few of our subscribers. And we had a long list, so I'm just going to go through about 8 or 10. So ETF 0101, thank you. KJW82191, Michael Doherty, For the Love of Money, Jacob Teal, El Torres, Dan Farrell, Albert AJ, Jose Pardo, and Blake. Thanks, and appreciate you guys subscribing. And, of course, I'm not wearing my shirt today, but if you guys want to support our podcast as well as our construction camp for kids, be sure to click the link below. Get some Contractors kick-ass gear. We love it when you guys support us. Got a few shipments actually going out this week, Terry.
There you go.
Yeah, super pumped. So, Terry, you brought up this idea, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it. Then Drake said, hey, that's actually a great idea for a show. We should do that. So I'm starting to feel a little teamed up here, but let's go over what we're going on today, because I think there is some actual value here today.
Well, all of this is coming off of a 24-hour road trip back home to see family over the holidays with a van full of kids, wife, and grandma. And, you throw in the earbuds and you put on an audiobook and you can just drive. And whatever hell is going on behind you, you don't know about because you have the earbuds in and you're listening and you're educating yourself. So, Will, any opportunity you can take to better yourself, you should take it, especially you.
Yeah, well, first off, how long is that drive from Florida to where you live?
We made it from here to Florida in 24 hours. And that was, for the most, we stopped for like a couple hours, take a nap, but it was straight.
So, Drake, let me ask you, if you have somebody ready to bestow some wisdom of the books that are best used for business owners, you as an individual and contractor, do you trust the information more knowing that the lunatic would drive 24 hours?
I would trust that lunatic if he was listening to audiobooks the whole time.
There we go. Well, cool. So, yeah, I actually went down my little library and was like, I already had 3 or 4. So I think we'll volley it a little bit today and have some cross conversation. So we wanted to go over 10, but I think, we'll be able to go over a few of these. We may even have some bonus books today. And I made Terry promise that if we were going to do this podcast episode, that we would not be going over coloring books. So we have omitted those from our podcast prep today. So, and Terry, I know you worked really hard on that list, but, we're here. You know, we gotta be like be perceived as intellectuals, right?
Yeah, thankfully the pop-up books, they were able to stay in the list.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, cool. And this is funny. Our first book, I think, ended up on everybody's list.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've talked about it on this show, but listen, if you're a business owner out there, Traction by Gino Wickman, man alive, it is a game changer. And we've been implementing Traction for so long. And hell, Terry, we use it in our construction camp or nonprofit even as an operating system.
But that's where I first heard about it is like we came into these meetings, you were using all this terminology, you were moving in a way and talking in a way that I just didn't understand. And when I asked you, you were like, well, have you ever read Traction? I was like, no. So that was, the first one I went out and got. And even though I'm not in a position to change huge organizational flow, it's helped me in so many different ways.
Yeah, and Drake, I know you work with companies all over the country, especially from the financial side, and I know you probably look at it and be like, man, Traction would fix a lot of these fucking problems.
Yeah, it's such a good framework for people, right? So we think like we're used to creating businesses. We're like feel like we have to do everything from scratch, right? Or you get so distracted because you know how to do the technical side of the business, but then it's like the actual running of the business. I think it gives just a really great framework that can kind of help you. Here's a playbook that has worked for a lot of businesses before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and also I think the value, and when I try to explain Traction, I'd like to go around the room and hear everybody's takeaways here, is it's just a standardized operating procedure for your business. They use EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. I like to use Standard Operating Procedure because it gets everybody behaving in the right way in the organization. And a lot of times when I'm working with companies around the country, I've got a great client out of Macon, Georgia right now that I've been working with. There's a lot of times either business owners fall into two categories. They don't understand that, hey, you need to have a vision. Like you can aim high and aim big in your company. And then the others are like they're aiming so high but have no way to get there. And this is kind of like, let's just break it down into micro steps. And when I say micro steps, I mean the 90-day world, which starts to bring some clarity for all the people that are just trying to show up and work for you, right? That's been kind of one of my big takeaways. But, Terry, you've gotten a chance to experience it on a few different levels, and I know you love the idea of introducing this into the world of academia.
Oh,
But
so much.
What's been kind of your take after reading it and trying to implement?
Well, I mean, so obviously working in higher ed for as long as I have, you're not going to be able to take an organization or a system like that and move it in the direction that you would a startup or a small business. But you can take pieces of Traction in the way that you either break down your priorities and look at your rocks, or the way that you'll run a meeting and get from start to finish and have it be productive for everyone in. And if you can get some people to buy in, I mean, that's the key is like, I'll look at your organization or some of the different ones and you can see where everyone's bought in. They're all using the same verbiage. They're all moving in the same direction, and it just accelerates that organization. If you can get a few people in higher ed or in your circle that you're working with using the same terminology and buying into those concepts, you're able to take your small group and move it forward a little bit faster than everyone else. And that's what we've done.
Yeah, and Drake, I know you get to see it in businesses all the time, but if you were to give like a 60-second rundown of your kind of perception of EOS, I mean, it's hard to define, but, what would be your definition?
I mean, I do tend to think of it as just like an operating system or framework, right? So it's like, I'm not always the type to just follow exactly what is laid out, but it's built for those kinds of entrepreneurs who want to look at something and have a rough framework, but not feel like they're constrained by a list of 150 rules that will make or break your business, right? And so I like thinking in frameworks so that it's like, hey, I do things my way, but how can I shift this so that it's more organized so I don't have to do all the organizational work?
Well, and that's it. And I think that's the beauty of, I got to give Gino Wickman credit on the title, the fact that it's called Traction, because boy, when you start getting those things like the issues, the people, the vision, the process is all in place, boy, it takes off quick. And one of the big things I think Sydney is going to kill me for this. But let me break it down. Like, if you are interested in Traction EOS and you just want to see a real world example, not a kind of theatrical view or go through some big sales spiel about it, like, hit me up on our contact here. I'm happy to talk you through it. Hell, I'll let you sit in one of our meetings so you can experience what a leadership or what they call an L10, a level 10 meeting is in EOS. Happy to do that. We have tons of contractors that do that from around the country. And they can see my team that has been doing it now for 4 or 5 years. And to be clear, like, even with EOS, it's a game changer in business. However, nobody ever really gets to 100%. That's something we just all need to understand. And coming from a C, D, sometimes F student, like, that's good to know that it's like, no, it's okay. You can be a little lower on the spectrum. But I still think, like, after 4 or 5 years, we're still only maybe 80% implemented, because you bring in new people in the organization. Hell, you have pandemics, you have all this stuff that just changes in the world. And then all of a sudden you got to pivot. But the 90-day model, the long-term vision, it keeps you aligned in that. I love it. So it's so ironic that we all had that kind of on our list. So, but Terry, I know that the next book actually helped settle some marital arguments. And we've talked about this book previous to your appearance a few times.
That's the thing is, like, I reached out to a group of people I really respected and asked them for their top books. I also asked you, and these were some of the ones I got.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate
You're welcome,
that.
buddy. But, the 6 types of working geniuses, right? So if you go through it, basically, in a nutshell, the way it breaks it down is there are some things in your life that you are just great at, right? And they give you joy and they give you energy when you do them, right? And then there's other things that you can do and probably do well, but they just suck the ever-living life out of you. And if you can figure out what those things are that really give you joy, and you can position yourself in a way where that's what you're doing, you're just going to be happier in life. And, I got into it. I went through it in a day. I took the assessment. They have like a little 10-minute assessment tied to it. I took the assessment. I was done in less than 12 hours with it. I went home, was talking to my wife. She went through it. She read it. She went through the assessment. And we're looking at the results, and we're like, oh, that explains so much. I mean, and I'm the type of person who I love to get something started, and I'll get it about 80% there, and I might not always finish it, right? And it explains like half the unfinished projects in my shop, right?
Yeah, you're low tenacity, man. It's like, that's why we just kind of do this show, but we drink a lot of beer, but we don't actually get anything done, right? That's why we have Drake, right? Yeah. Drake, are you high tenacity?
I haven't taken the quiz. I mean,
I have to do it.
Man.
It's $25.
Yeah, I kind of think I need to now. I love personality tests.
And I just spoke at a conference in Louisville this year for a network of contractors from around the country, and it was about establishing systems and processes. And I will be very clear, even if you have a small team of 2 or 3 people, the working genius model helps immensely for making processes be created and then implemented and then actually stick in the long term. And I think that's just incredibly important, especially in small organizations and contractors. You're constantly pivoting with the times and you're getting all excited, but then all of a sudden something crashes and it's like, oh crap, all stop, let's change direction, right? And actually, I want to hear a little bit about this, Drake. You said we're not going to talk about it today, but this is a great segue because I think Working Genius is perfect for implementing processes on a small team or a large team. But you mentioned a book that I have not read that I'm now interested in called Anti-Fragile. And it's talking about systems that break and end up getting better the more they break. So this is in my library now. Like, tell me about this damn book.
So Anti-Fragile. So when we think about a system, right, we can all envision that one employee, when she or he doesn't get the specific report that they're supposed to get, then everything stops, right? And so, that would be a fragile system, right? It's everybody is dependent upon the next step, right? Whereas a system that's anti-fragile will still function if something breaks. And so the idea of developing anti-fragile systems is building your systems and processes so that they actually get stronger as there is certain elements of chaos. And you can even take it to some people, if one thing is out of place, they lose their minds. Other people, sometimes the chaos actually makes them focus and do better. I don't know any high Ds who might think that is the case.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Although I'm the same way. So
And that never happens in construction businesses, by the way. We're not ever not waiting on somebody to complete that one task, right? So
No, you want to talk about a perfect example. I went to lunch today at Chipotle, right? Great restaurant.
by the way, Chipotle, if you're listening, we are looking for sponsorships. So here's your
you can brand
shameless
me
plug.
brand me like a NASCAR, right? So apparently, like weather coming in, like there were certain things they were out of. They listed it on the door, right? Well, get through the line. The other thing they are out of that they did not list is forks, right? So they're going to sell you an entire meal, and they're not going to give you a fork, right? So you had spoon, and you could manage, but if someone got a salad, they're just up a creek at that point. And to sit and watch the people walk over and search through, just trying to figure out what they were going to do without that utensil.
who used chopsticks as straws as chopsticks?
They were using two forks as tongs. It was awesome.
Dude, the capitalist in me wish you would have called me, Terry, and I would have immediately gone and bought a bunch of forks and sold them for $1 a pop.
No, I
right
did
out
one
that
better.
door.
I walked across the street. I walked across the parking lot to Panera and stole a fork and returned it.
They, oh yeah, because they serve you with like real cutlery there, not like the plastic stuff.
Yeah.
Damn, you were brutal, guy. But then again, I don't know. What are you, 6'2", 6'3", Terry? You're a big guy.
I bought a cookie. Like, it wasn't
Oh,
going to
okay,
be one
yeah.
of those things.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, cool. Well, hold on. So thanks for sharing, Drake. That is now on my list because I love to think of like failure in scripts as opportunity. So when I hear broken systems, I get better with time. Like that's going to be on my list. So you guys have both enlightened me with books today. I got to touch base on this one, and I don't want to make it too long here because this book is Michael Gerber wrote the E-Myth years ago. He's done a few revisions. And I think when I say E-Myth, a lot of people, the first thing that comes to mind is, hey, work on the business, not in the business. Well, that's kind of a really nice, fluffy phrase that comes out of that book. But when you're down in the grind and in the trenches, it's like, wait a minute, whoa. How do you do that? There's a lot of discussions about systems and processes in this. And if you're a contractor out there struggling to really break out and try to work on the business, number one, probably could get back to some ego check because I think a lot of us as contractors, me included, we would create our own problems to feel like we were needed in the business because we weren't comfortable working on the business because that's not where our skill set is. So contractors are consistently putting themselves into these roles of firefighter when the fact that they should be fucking working on the business, right? I worked with a contractor this last quarter that was struggling with this. We read E-Myth together. I've read it several times. And one of the big takeaways I found from E-Myth that could be put in practice today. If you can't do this right now, do it, just for a week. But I would say if you want to stress test your business according to systems and processes, according to E-Myth, is take and tell your employees you are not going to talk to any customers at all. They are responsible for talking to the customers, and it'll allow you to see how well your systems and processes are built. But then secondly, what it'll do is it'll allow you to find where the bucket may be leaking. Because what's going to happen is you're going to find out, oh, that's what caused me to have to run back in. But you will find so much joy in being able to back up and work on the business when you're not having to run around talking to customers all the time. Now, if you are that independent contractor that's still kind of the salesperson, we got a few resources down the road here we'll talk about in our book pile that I think will help there. But that's kind of my big key takeaways of E-Myth. There's so much knowledge there. It's just never put to practice. And there's so many folks that have read it. So, yeah. Terry, you got any big kind of tidbits on E-Myth. I don't think you've read this one.
No, I
you?
haven't. And that's the great thing is going through this list. Wow, I think we had 2 of them that matched up. Everything else is a one-off that I wasn't thinking about or you weren't thinking about. And it's one of those things that, like, it doesn't matter how old you are or how long you've been doing this. There's always something out there you can learn and take every day to try and improve that process, improve yourself, improve your business, because you're going to be so much better off for it.
Yeah, and actually, Drake, can we cut out the last 5 minutes of the episode because I realized I encouraged my listeners to not talk to customers. Then again, I'm your customer, and I like working with you. So if next week you're like, hey, by the way, I'm not going to be your producer anymore. You're going to work with Juan or Jimmy or whoever the heck it is. I'll be like, damn, he took my advice. I did what you told me to do, Will.
I was just listening.
Don't listen to Will. Don't listen to Will.
This episode is sponsored by Performance, the bonus system designed to increase profits for your construction company. Performance incentivizes your production team for more efficient installs and rewards them when they beat your preset labor goals. So no more milking the clock and no more unnecessary gas station trips. Performance drives your team to work harder and smarter. Every construction company on Performance has seen a 7% decrease in direct labor costs or more. Click the link in the description or visit performance.co to schedule your demo today. That's PER4 MANCE.co. Reward your team, retain your team, grow your profits.
Well, I mean, actually, Drake, I got to give credit where credit's due. You've scaled Content Gym really well. You're helping entrepreneurs out there by producing content and getting everybody in their comfort zone. And you've been able to push and delegate some of the tasks off that you hate, right, to your team. Like, how long did that take you from startup to where you are now?
I don't know. Probably a few months.
Wait a minute.
Probably a few
How
months.
long?
Probably a few months.
A few months?
I'm really good at delegating when I get systems set up. So I get systems set up.
We're not going to see him next week, Will. He's gone.
Yeah. We just got delegated, bro.
Well, here's the important thing is understanding where the value is to your customer. Like, what is your customer value, right? What's the most important thing? Not everybody wants to see how the sausage gets made. They just want the sausage. And so, like, what is the most important thing? And I like to use AI and automation stuff, so I get rid of a lot of the not so fun stuff.
Sorry, weird segue, and then we'll get back to the books. I was having a conversation with a contractor the other day asking me, like, hey, do you think AI is going to be a big deal in contracting business? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, I haven't integrated a lot of AI in my business, but I think AI for contracting is going to be huge. Found this case study where we have a landscaping contractor taking pictures of a home, plats, and then uploading them to AI to create the AI concepts for the landscape design rather than going to Google Sketch or something like that. So why waste all the time sketching out everything when you can literally upload it and then present those to the customer and they tell you what they want? And the professionalism involved in that is insane. And this is somebody that barely graduated high school, did not graduate college, and is running a successful landscaping business, turning just so many estimates out because they're presenting themselves in a professional way using AI. It's crazy.
What are they looking at AI as? It's just another tool. I mean, they're picking it up, and it's going to make them more money. I mean, if everyone's concerned about what it's going to do, or is it going to take my job or replace me? No, it's a tool. And if you can use that tool, then I'm going to hire you to use it. If I just need that tool, I'm not going to hire you, and I'm going to get that instead. So
there's going to be tons of use cases when it comes to interacting with your customers, doing automated follow-ups, sending email blasts or messaging with people, answering all the basic questions. You don't really need a human to sit there and just wait until something happens. So I think you're going to see a lot of people that have, 1 to 5 employees do really, really well, really, really fast if they embrace it. And then the companies that have, 5 to 50 employees, they're going to have to fit it kind of within their systems. But there's tons of stuff you can do. And when we think about it, it's going to be great for contractors because it's going to help automate a lot of the back office stuff. The stuff that they don't necessarily want to do as much.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. And I'm excited for it. If Dylan were here, I'd make my tinfoil hat wearing comments, but I think it's exciting. I think it's going to be awesome. So Terry, I was really interested why the next book that was selected was Becoming by Michelle Obama by you, but just kidding, just kidding. Actually, the next book that you put there, I kind of had a V8 moment of slapping myself in the head, and I was like, damn, yeah, that needs to be on a top 10 list for contractors.
And I know you have probably taken something away from it, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? You know, it is one of those that has been out for 25 plus years, I think now. It's been out for a minute. And I know so many investors, business owners have gone through it. And it's one of those things that with any of these books, any of these concepts that you read about, it's not a one size fits all. You're going to take pieces and parts of it and you're going to apply it to your situation and figure out how it works for you. And a good buddy of mine, you know, both of us read it, both of us went through it at the same time, and we both operate differently, and it's perfectly fine. It opened my eyes to so many different types of investments and really kind of kickstarted me pushing and moving harder in real estate.
Well, Terry, did you pick on the irony that the fact is the poor dad in the book was a professor at a college?
You have no idea. Like, I'm going through this.
We may have to start putting like an insult ping like we did on the attorney episode. We've been taking jabs all episode today. But no, seriously, though, on a serious note, like, when did you read that book?
Oh, I'm going to say 8 years ago. It's been a minute.
So it's probably about the same. It's probably like 10 years, 9-10 years for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I can see what you're doing in your real estate business directly from that book.
Right.
It's just nuts. I mean, it's so helpful. And I'll give you a good case study. My son started a business when he was 18 after I gave him an Audible account. And I bought 3 books. This was one of them. And he read it. And he started an in-ground trampoline company based on the concepts in that book. And he ended up having like 8,000. We're talking about an 18-year-old kid working maybe 10 hours a week. He had graduated high school early. So he had a whole semester of doing nothing. So he created a business. He ended up selling this in-ground trampoline business. And not to mention, he also had $7,000 cash left over before the sale that he just put in his pocket. Obviously, we taught him about taxes. And Terry, you know Ben, Dr. Ben Bigelow at the University of Oklahoma. You know, I went to speak to his students, and we were talking about, like, business and entrepreneurship. They have a lot of interest in it. And one of the key concepts that I was taught about, because I wasn't taught about this stuff in school, it's just this concept of when you're an employee, you have, let's say, $1,000 that you made. And then you're going to get taxes taken out of that $1,000. And then you get to spend on your living after. So when you house everything under a business, the model flips. And what happens is you get to spend on the expenses of the business. And sometimes that means your cell phone, your car, advertising, things like that. And then you're taxed on the remainder. So the business is just flipped by housing everything in an LLC, an S Corp, or if you're ever up to that size, a C Corp. But there's so many valuable tools in here. And Drake, Terry, have you guys ever bought the game that Robert Kiyosaki made, the cash flow?
Yeah, Rat Race.
Yeah. We have it, and we've played it with our kids. It's actually a great game. I'm not trying to plug Robert Kiyosaki, but it's a pretty valuable lesson.
No, I mean, you brought up the things that you weren't taught in school, and they're still not being taught. And we could fill an episode with everything that's not being taught in higher ed. There's so many concepts that when it comes about entrepreneurship, finances, personal finance, or business finances, money, and how to work in business, that's not being communicated. That, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're getting this information, be it in a classroom, be it in a book, or be in a conversation with someone that knows what they're doing. We need to make sure that this next generation is educated better than we were, a lot better than you.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, hold on. My poor education was on my terms, not the school's terms. And by the way, fun little fact, Terry, did you know what the original title of Rich Dad, Poor Dad was supposed to be?
No.
The reason your A student will work for my C student. I don't know why the editor didn't think that would work, but that was a great book title.
Hey, the majority of small business owners I know were C and D
that is pretty
students.
good.
So
Cool. We got another Audible play coming up because Drake contributed. So, Drake, I want to hear about the hard things about the hard things.
So this book is a classic. It was actually given to me or recommended to me by my investor in my last company, the internet service provider. So when we are reading business books, right, we're hearing the story like it just proceeded in a normal narrative where it's just straight line. When the reality is running a business is kind of like going to war where there's a huge fog of war and you're not quite sure that the right decision is going to work out, especially when you take big bets. And so this book is all about making hard decisions when things are fuzzy. And so, so it's written in tech background. So it's Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen when they were running up with Netscape. And so it's a really good book if you have a business and you're sitting there going, all these books make it sound so easy, but it's not, doesn't feel like it's this easy. This book will make you feel better at night.
Yeah, but I'm glad to hear that because there is a lot of crossover. I've read a lot of tech books recently because of our software company, and I've translated that information over to my home service business.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that's kind of cool to see the bleed over. But also, I mean, I don't know a single contractor out there that's not just overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
War. Hey, especially now. I mean, the world is like literally negative 20 degrees in the upper Midwest right now. And I'm sure contractors are thinking, yeah, we'll be fine with no revenue.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There's so many stories like that where it's like existential crisis after existential crisis. And how do you actually manage those? And any contractor is going to be used to that, whether it's, okay, we're done with this big project, or oops, this line item on the budget got missed and I have to figure out a way to make it up. There's a ton of different ways where that kind of stuff can happen.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you have that. And by the way, Drake, do you digest books and audio? You seem like I got to read it guy.
No, audio, but I do Audible at 3x speed.
ooh.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you one of those weirdo Mensa guys that are super, super high level smart?
You said it, not me.
Oh, that's why he's hanging out with us. He's like, you know what? Let me go mingle with the commoners down here.
Yeah, let's see if there's any crayons they're eating today.
Look, you guys remember The Matrix? You guys remember The Matrix when Neo wanted to learn Kung Fu and they plugged him in and he woke up and he's like, I know Kung Fu now. That's what I want to be like. I want that to be my life where I can just plug in and download.
Yeah. Dude, it's only a matter of time. I know we were thinking that, but, I know that we were comparing our futures to like the 3 seashells and Demolition Man back in the day, right? But then you look around, and honestly, if you look around, Teslas kind of look like some of the futuristic cars that were in Demolition Man. So we're here, folks. It's the future. They quit being disappointed. Well, Terry, I'm going to jump forward because I want to hear your take on this book and not only how it has affected your working relationships in business, but your marriage.
So I just got through this probably, I don't know, within the past 10 days on the trip. So rocket fuel is, it's tied directly into traction. And so what it set up was that idea of you have two people, and you have more than two people in the business, but you have this visionary and then you have an integrator. And I think what really kind of is interesting to me, Will, is like whenever I see you and Sydney out together, it's very easy to see who the visionary is and who the integrator is, right? And going through this, what was interesting, they're looking at, all right, so you have a visionary and they're coming up with these great ideas and they're running all over the place thinking about what's that next step to take, right? Well, it doesn't matter if you can do that unless you have that next person that's able to integrate those ideas into reality and get them to actually function. Those great ideas are not going to get you anywhere. And they pulled out a statistic that it was something like only 5% of the population or something amazingly low like that are natural integrators, right? So you have a lot more visionaries out there in business, running businesses that are looking for these integrators And so if you're able to find them, you need to pay them and retain them because they are hard to come by. And if you can find the right one to work with your business and work with you, you need to hold on to them. And I don't know if that is business advice for you, Will, or marriage advice, but I think you could use both of them.
Well, hold on. So I could see this, like, you're like, hey, honey, let's go buy this train wreck of a building in downtown nowhere, and it'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
So did that idea come from Terry Kleinfelter or Carrie Kleinfelter? And for anybody listening, yes, Terry's wife is named Carrie.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
And that's the thing is, this can be applied obviously in business, but when you're in business with your spouse, there's just another level of complexity. But understanding.
no, what are you talking about? There's no complexity working ever. That's bullshit, Terry. Redacted. We're taking that statement out. It's completely cool all the time, 100% of the time. Never, ever is there a problem working with your spouse.
No,
Which, to give credit where credit's due, I'm being sarcastic. But in construction, we find that so much that it's spouses and or family members just always working with one another. And it just creates all this noise, and damn, it's exhausting.
Well, and my expectation is, what are the dinner conversations like around your table, right? Like,
Oh, they're always about business.
right.
Always.
And so this is the fun thing, right? I don't know what another dinner conversation would look like. My kids don't, definitely, right? I mean, we're talking about business investments and opportunities and, taxes and what are we going to be doing? It's all the mechanics of the business when we have that downtime. And I don't know what my kids are going to turn out like, but they're going to have this, like this history of like, yeah, this was a little different in our household.
Yeah.
Well, and let's pause for a second because we haven't quite defined them all yet. And so let's clue the audience in on the definitions of each
good
of them.
point.
Will, you have a really good built-in split going on right now. So how would you define the Visionary-Integrator from Rocket Fuel?
Yeah, so if you haven't read Rocket Fuel, there's a section that Mark Winters wrote specifically in this book that says if you have these problems going on in your business, you are probably a visionary operating the business. And it was like reading a freaking autobiography of all the problems in my business. So if you're an integrator and these are the problems and you're running your business, then you're probably an integrator and you need to seek the help of a visionary. Fact is most business owners end up becoming visionaries because, they want to grow and they want destiny and freedom. They want to be able to create something, right? So by definition, I am a visionary. So I'm typically big picture, big ideas, moving the ball forward despite kind of the respite of everybody else in the world saying, hey, shouldn't be done. And the fact is the integrator is the great Brita filter of the shitty ideas of the visionary and takes all the big ideas, because visionaries and business owners alike are very bad at spewing out all this stuff and saying, we need to do this, we need to do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, nobody knows what the hell we're doing. So the visionary integrator relationship filters a lot of those ideas, make sure that, no, we're going to pause that because we're already working on this and we need to implement this so we can get to the next step. And it's a powerful combo. I just got fortunate enough to where my wife was a great integrator. I have an integrator in another business, and I recognized that early on. There's a lot of healthy conflict between a visionary and integrator. And it's common that if you're a small business owner that only has a small team of like 2, 3, 4, 5 people, you may find that the integrator sits in a few different seats, and it's real common. So we've got a great business we work with in Tampa, Florida. They've only got 4 people. Well, the integrator, by definition, is really the office person. She is a great brake pedal on the business, but she doesn't really have the authority of the owner. But all of the ideas are filtered through her to prevent the owner from burning the business to the ground.
Yep.
And by the way, I love the examples in the book, Terry, one example that was not used, and I'd love to hear your favorite example of a visionary integrator combo. Most people know the Wright brothers that created, the first airplane. They caught flight in North Carolina and Ohio. But I find that, like, in that relationship, Charles Taylor was the integrator. He was the guy that made things work, made sure that things were safe. He molded the engine. And if you haven't seen the engine that Charles Taylor molded for the Wright 1 Flyer in the Air and Space Museum in Dulles, Virginia, you've got to go see it. You think, man, this guy made this in a bicycle shop in Ohio with no specialized equipment. And it looks like a real engine that came out of the factory line. So that's one of my favorite case studies of visionary integrator combos. And that just happened to be two brothers, visionary versus integrator Charles Taylor. That's my favorite example. Did you have one that popped out in that book? Terry, you
Well, I
liked?
mean, they were talking, Henry Ford and the individual that he was working with and putting the brakes literally on some of his ideas and how he moved forward. I think one thing that kind of stuck with me more than any of it was they talked about this idea that you might be a visionary and you might think you're also an integrator, and you're not, right? And it's this idea that you can do both things. And like, let's just put it out there, like the percentage of people out there that can do both things and do them well is so ridiculously small that you are most likely not in that percentage, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was pretty insightful because all this time, you think that you might be doing something well or doing it good for your business. And the fact of the matter is you're probably not. And you probably need to bring in some help or bring in another set of eyes to look at those decisions that you're making.
Yeah. So I would be traditionally very much a visionary, but I've had to play integrator so many times. And you can do it's just going to suck you dry. You are just going to be so exhausted, not even like physically exhausted, just mentally you will feel just completely drained. Believe it or not, there are people out there who like to come into work and do the same thing every day. They like to cover the details and make sure all the boxes are checked, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. There are actually people like that, and those are the integrators. And they are invaluable. When you have a visionary, they are going to be more risk averse, so they're not going to like as much risk in the business, which is why they're going to shoot down a lot of your ideas unless you can paint a clear picture. But that friction is good because it encourages the visionary to develop their ideas more. If they really want the idea to work, they will go down further into the details of the idea to make sure that it's going to work. If you're a visionary thinking you can be an integrator, just you haven't seen anything until you've seen like an integrator just turn it on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, the title of the book is Rocket Fuel, which is a compliment to Traction. I feel like we're going to sell a whole bunch of books from this episode for Gino Wickman and Mark Winters.
Referral link down below. No.
Man, it's such a great book, but the title is fitting because I think the biggest thing that happens when identifying a visionary integrator combo in a business is the visionary doesn't get the fuck out of the way. And they read the book, they're like, yeah, I'm a visionary, look at me, I'm a visionary. And then they don't release any of the control. And then the integrator is sitting there without any of the authority, which should be their role. And to be clear, he doesn't listen to this podcast. I hope he does. Maybe I'll chop this up in short form and send to him. I worked under a individual that was a true VI individual in both. And the amount of capacity, his name was Joe Rusk. I worked with him for 3 years in Virginia. Man, what a monster. He knew EOS front, back, left, right. It was amazing. The amount of capacity, once you see the VI individual that's one and the same, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I can't even keep up. Like, that's a whole different role. And Joe, if you're out there, I hope you get to hear this. I love you, buddy. One of my great business mentors, amazing guy, such an awesome person. So, Terry, let's jump down to number 8. You had a great one here that once again I was like, damn it, I should have put that on the list.
I know.
Because it's a good
You
one.
know,
And specifically for contractors.
right. My expectation is you recommended this one to me. So when I didn't see it on your list, either you move past it or, you don't take your own advice. But built to sell, the idea of creating a business that can thrive without you, I think is very meaningful to any small business, right? And it applies to any small business that you're looking at, especially those service-related businesses, because what you look at doing is how can I build my business to a point where it doesn't need me, right? And it takes a whole lot of humility in that process to understand that if I'm going to make this business successful, I don't need to be that keystone or that linchpin in there. I need to have this business be successful rather with me being there or with me not. And that takes a whole lot of humility from an individual, which is, I think, lacking a lot of these times.
Yeah, funny story. So this book, I love this book. I like the podcast even more. So the author of this book has a podcast. And when I was getting ready to sell my internet service provider, it was probably about a year and a half before I was going to sell. I realized, okay, I'm going to need to sell this. I'm going to have to learn how to do it. And so I listened to probably 200 hours of his podcast, just learning about all the different businesses, all the different buy-sell transactions, because he goes through this it's literally a history and a story of different business owners that have sold their business, and it talks about the things that they did, the ways they were able to get out of the way, the ways they were not able to get out of the way, the contracts that were good that they signed, the contracts that were bad that they signed. I ended up selling my business for an industry-leading multiple because I was actually listening to this podcast so much to learn what a buyer might actually want when they bought the business.
And I don't think enough people who are in business or own their own businesses really take that step to be thinking that one day I'm going to sell this, right? And that one day might be sooner than you think. And the idea that if you set it up correctly, you can sell your business, you can have this windfall. And if it's where you want to be, you ride off into the sunset, or you parlay that into that next adventure that you want to go into. I don't think that, for me, that's a concept I'm still trying to wrap my head around. That, hey, maybe I just walk away one day, put a price tag on it, get a big check, and go on my merry way.
Well, I think one interesting takeaway that I took away from Built to Sell was, by the way, it's a great case study in that book about a graphic design company, right? I don't know if that was the author's choice to pick that, but we all think we have a uniquely creative business that nobody else can do but us, right? But what they did was they showed how it can be done to make it a scalable, replicable business that returns multiples at the end. And as contractors, we do that. It's like, T&L custom cabinetry, and nobody's as good and nobody can do that. And we should go back to the E-myth on that. But by creating that scalability, it becomes massively value. And I think we're in the golden age of contractors right now. I know a lot of people are doom and gloom, but we have never seen higher returns on multiples on selling a business in home services than any other time in the point of history. It's crazy right now. So that's why this book is valuable.
And South Park predicted it.
Oh, yeah. And probably The Simpsons had it.
Have you seen the South Park AI episode?
No, I haven't.
Oh, no, you have to watch it.
This is why we were talking about this for our guests. We got to do hey, pull it up and let's view it during the show.
That was actually a recommendation I got on vacation. They're like, hey, love the podcast, really good, but can you get some videos playing when you're talking about this stuff? I'm like, I'll bring it up.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna have to queue up South Park AI. What's the keywords we got to look for? We seem to be doing a lot of promoting of other products.
So, it's a book episode. So South Park, their episode, I don't remember what the actual technical name of it, but it's when they talk about AI. And so what happens is AI gets so good that everybody doesn't know how to do anything. And so main characters, I think his toilet gets clogged or something, so he calls the handyman, and he calls the handyman to fix his toilet. And he's like, "All right, cool. I'm gonna be there, tomorrow." And he's upset, but he gets over there and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm making like $160,000. Apparently, everybody forgot how to do everything." And so they flip it to where all the handymen, the contractors are driving around in like Lamborghinis, and like all the psychologists and lawyers and accountants are hanging outside of the Home Depot, going, "I need a job. I need a job." It's
The
hilarious.
fact that show's still hitting on those points. That's
They
amazing.
nailed it. It's so funny.
Oh man, I'm going to show my age, but I remember watching the very first South Park episode when I was in 6th grade, and I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I watched it.
That's hilarious.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to have to look that up tonight. So, all right, cool. Where are we at on the list, Terry?
Well, what do we just go through? When to build to sell.
We went through Rocket Fuel, Built to Sell,
That's where we're at.
and then we somehow segued into South Park. Thank you, Drake. That was amazing. That's great. Hey, actually, I want to hear about this one, Drake. You threw Blue
Okay.
Ocean Strategy on the list. I got to hear about your unique psychological books that you keep throwing in here. So,
Okay.
what Blue Ocean Strategy? Oh, and you even linked it in our podcast prep docs.
So Blue Ocean Strategy is, so when we think about how we're going to direct our company, right? There's tons of, let's use Jolly Goat as an example and what they just did with their branding, right? I don't remember what their original garage door name was, right? But it is an E01 garage door or something like that, right? So it's a very generic name. It's really hard to distinguish what makes that different than B1 garage doors, right? So that would be what would be considered a red ocean, where it's very competitive, very commodity based. You don't really know the difference between anybody. And so in a red ocean where there's tons of blood in the water, everything is about price and you're just fighting to the bottom. Blue ocean strategy comes from when you are able to combine two things that are a little bit different to create a unique value proposition in the mind of the customer. And once you're able to create that unique value proposition, there's nobody else fighting. There's nobody else in the ocean with you. And so it's a blue ocean where you get to swim around and do what you want and have all the resources. And so it really comes down to when you're strategizing, like for us, when we were the internet service provider, right? Took this approach with customer service. I knew that people were really upset with long hold times and they were really upset with the internet being down for days and not knowing when anything was going to be done. Right?
Yeah.
Instead, we just opted for really radical transparency where we would answer the phone within 5 minutes and we would fix anything within 24 to 48 hours. And we would be always on the phone with the customer, letting them know what was going on and sending out updates. And so that's not necessarily like macro level, totally changed my business to do that, but that's just a way we approach customer service by looking at what everybody else was doing and go, hey, what can we add in and marry to make us unique and different than everybody else?
Well, and what's interesting about that is you think like your service providers. It's like, well, how can we be any different than everybody else? And just that same goes for plumbing, electrical, HVAC, things like that. So I'm glad you gave that kind of analogy because I was like, I don't know what the hell this book's about. But I did pull it up. I'm an idiot and didn't realize you actually put the link in the show notes. Or not the show notes, the show prep. So, and I'm all about like, all right, how can we kind of trigger and exploit a weakness that's already in the market? Dan Antonelli talked about that during our branding episode.
Yep.
And I love just this whole concept. And to be clear, I did that in my market. I found the weakness of my competitors, siphoned lead share from them, and then slowly took over the market. And now we're playing my game. We're not playing their game, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. So, Terry, we're coming up on our time today. And I'm going to list the rest of these that we didn't get to for anybody listening. But I'm going to let you pick the next one. Which one you want? Because, man, we got a few here that we didn't even get to.
You know, what I'm surprised is I don't think you've heard of this one or gone through it. Thinking in bets.
No, this one came up today. So give me the Cliff Notes version, Terry. You're a good educator. Like, give me something that would cause me to not want to read it. Because
I don't have to do this for my students, but I'll do it for you. I'll dumb it down for you, Will, right?
oh, there we go. Yeah, give me the kindergarten version, buddy.
So you have to imagine in every one of the decisions that you're going to make, right, in business and in life, there is an element of luck or control that you don't have, right? There's going to be things that are outside of your element of control that you're just going to have to deal with. And so the idea here is that if you can look at everything that is knowable and you can control, right? And you can do your research and you can do your due diligence on it and understand that you've done 90% of it and 90% of it says it's good, then there's 10% that might just be unlucky, right? And so if you get hit on one of those unlucky things, like you do in real estate or you do in business at times, it doesn't mean that your process was bad. It just means you were unlucky. And I think that was huge.
Just means you had shit luck.
Right. I mean, because like how many times have like you've done something and you're like, man, that should have worked. Like everything was right. Well, it could have just been bad luck, right? So definitely, if you have the time thinking in bets, you have to go through that because it clarifies the idea that if you know what you know, you're going to be fine, and that sometimes shit happens. Is that dumbed down enough?
No, I think you dovetail into a interesting topic.
Uh-oh.
Because I had a conversation the other day with a contractor in the upper Midwest, really struggling with making a very sound decision. And I want to be very clear here. Contractors as a whole, I don't care if you're a man, woman, teenager starting your first business or anything. We all deal with imposter syndrome. We all do. I deal with it.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't know if this is going to work. And I don't want to look like the idiot in front of my team, my customers, or anybody. But the fact is it exists. So showing that if you have the original skill set and have a little bit of confidence, it's never going to work out 100%. But damn, if statistically it works out to 80, 90%, I like my odds on that. Hell, if I were going to get a lotto ticket at the gas station, which I don't pay lotto, but it's like, hey, if I were to go do that, it's like, yeah, cool, I'd play those odds. So, yeah, that makes me think a little bit better about this because also we're developing and doing some more training for our mid-level managers. And I know they don't say it, but they are dealing with this concept of, is my decision the right decision? And then their confidence goes down rather than looking at the odds of like, hey, you don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows, right? It's like, so just lean on your confidence and just, now the title makes sense. And Terry, I'm glad that you shared that with me.
Well, and so much of it, like, it comes from Andy Duke, who played poker. And, like, sometimes in poker, you're behind on the flop. You're behind on the draw. And then you just have to keep playing and know that eventually the hope is that the longer you stay in the game, that you will be able to make it work. And that's one of the other books on your Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. It's like sometimes you just have to, the goal is to just stay in the game. And the longer you can stay, the better you'll do. And that's part of the shift that has to happen.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. And I think all of these books, by the way, complement one another. I can't remember who brought it up. Drake, it may have been you or Terry. Like, you take a little nibble out of these books and you mold them together, and that's what I've done. And how my ADHD has caused me to forget some of the valuable lessons. And then I go back and I read them. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that last time.
Yep, me too.
By the way, one funny thing before we get to the rest of our list, we were having some mic check issues earlier today, and I have noticed that my hearing is getting worse after the years of power tools and things like that. And Terry, was it you talking about the frequency of listening to power tools and what you lose in hearing? And then Drake piped in with another interesting comment. So if you're listening to Audible, just recognize that this could be an issue, and then Terry and Drake will fill you in on the next.
Yeah. No, I mean, what I've always been told right? And what I've seen is, the noises associated with power tools, motors, stuff like that, typically damages your hearing at that higher pitch level, right? Higher frequencies, and those tend to be more female related voices. And so there might be a reason that I hear my wife less than I might hear someone else just because she has that voice. Now, I'm sure someone in the comment section is going to discuss this thoroughly with us, but
Well,
On
and I just
TikTok,
said,
they're pretty audible. They're pretty vocal on TikTok, I tell you. And sorry if I threw you under the bus, Drake. I guess you didn't make that
oh
comment.
no, you're good. Yeah, no, what I said was, and this is, I said, is that God's gift to man, and that's when the flames erupted, and I burned and was consumed into the fire of all of the female commenters, just scorching
Oh,
me.
man.
no.
Yeah, well,
Spontaneous combustion.
so if you end up sleeping on a couch based on the information you were provided on this podcast, please send any of your information to tlkleinfelter@gmail.com. He will receive your requests and take care of you very, very well. So, but yeah, I know we're nearing up our time today, guys. I've had a blast. Terry, this was actually great because it allowed me to revisit some of the things. It's like, yeah, these are great books, but some of the ones we missed, just to be clear, First Break All the Rules is a book written by Gallup. It's got like 6 authors. If you really want to know how happy or engaged your employees are, great book. I put on here any book on stoicism, and honestly, a part of a lot of contractors groups, and I look at responses from contractors to customers, and I'm like, yeah, you really need to practice some self-control. Any of those, man, who is it? Is it Ryan Holiday, Drake, that has a bunch of the books on stoicism?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've read like 3 of his. I've read Meditations, like great books on self-control. Drake, you mentioned Infinite Game. Fantastic book. Gives you a good long-term thinking of your business. I threw this on, and I would love to have this person on our show. Tom Wheelwright wrote a book called Tax-Free Wealth to help understand, how to shelter taxes, but in a legal way. And he introduced the book in a way to where I never thought of it this way. He goes, first off, 80% of the tax book is telling you how not to pay taxes because the government is trying to force money towards certain areas of the economy, and they're doing it in a way to shelter taxes. And I love that definition because it made me think about taxes a little bit differently. It's a complex book, but a very good read, both audible and in written form. And of course, The Profit Problem by Martin Holland, who we had as a guest on our show. And we've had a few folks, Corey Parks, if you're listening, Hydro Help 911 in North Carolina, read the book, even met with Martin online, great person. So these are some of the books that we didn't even get to, and I think there was one more on the list about sales management, but we'll try to get to that later. But listen, Terry, I'm proud of you, buddy. This was a great topic today. You got it.
Hey, you have to take every opportunity to learn. Do it on your own or in a group or however you can do. You got to better yourself one day at a time.
Hey, listen, just like E-Myth, I'm training you to be the host, and I'm the co-host. So I'm going to slowly push this off on you. And then I just may blend in the background like Drake.
He's
every
making
once
you
in
an
a while when I
integrator.
feel like that.
He's going to sink into the bushes like Homer Simpson.
He's making you an integrator.
Yeah, that's right. No, when we get canceled, I want him holding the bag, Drake. Well, anyway, hey, Drake, thanks for attending, buddy. I know you're always behind the scenes, but I love to pull you from behind the curtain and get you involved. Terry,
fun.
love taking the jabs, having some fun with you. And to you folks out there, contractors, you kick ass. We appreciate you, and thanks for listening to another episode of Beers with Contractors. See you next week.
Bye.
See everybody.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.